he was begging me to speak. I think there was some phrase about, I have more to say when Shelley's not around, but I'm not sure if that's true. So she's actually wanted to let everybody know that she's sorry she couldn't be here tonight. Shelley's in St. John this weekend with some family issues around her dad, so hopefully she'll be back safely tomorrow, and she feels bad that she's missing the opportunity to meet with you guys here this weekend. So let me just give you a quick overview of how we got to where we are today. I don't even remember exactly when we first posted the job posting. It was probably, June? So after one of our congregational meetings, we agreed that we were going to post the job, and we did, and we got all kinds of interesting resumes and some really bizarre resumes. And for some strange reason, a lot of applicants from Africa. I don't know, there seems to be an exodus from there. And along the way, we got this interesting email that was not an application so much as it was an inquiry. It came from this guy whose name we couldn't quite pronounce. And come to find out, it's pronounced Kyle, and you can figure out how to spell it later. And so Kyle was just inquiring a little bit about the job and about the ministry philosophy that we had at LifeBridge. And we had several applicants that we looked at along the way. We've dealt with this whole hiring process a little differently than how you might hire in a corporate setting. In a corporate setting, you try to get, take the 50 resumes that come in and narrow it down to 5 people you're going to interview, and you compare them all side by side and say which is the best employee for our organization. We decided not to do that this time. We decided to look at it more as who are the applicants that we see coming in, and who are the people that have, that God's bringing to our attention, or that's bringing them into our sphere of understanding and knowing. And then there was a number of things when we saw Kyle's resume, like almost immediately when I saw it, I said to Rob, this is very interesting because Kyle's ministry philosophy is very similar to where we are coming, the season we're coming through at LifeBridge with regard to the importance of doing community groups and being focused on outreach as well as discipleship. And so basically we went through the process of inquiring a little bit more about him. The board did an interview. Rob talked to him for a bit. Then we did a board interview via Skype. And then we got a whole whack of references, and we split them up amongst the board members, and each of us took a couple and made some phone calls and had the 2 or 3 that I talked to. All those conversations were at least 45 minutes long. We had developed a very specific list of questions we wanted to ask. We wanted to know everything we could possibly learn about Kyle. And we learned some interesting things. Some things that I'll save for later, but most of it was very, very complimentary. And of course, we were asking questions, though, that weren't just to find out all the good things about Kyle, but where some of his weaknesses were in ministry as well, because you need to know where his strengths are and where his weaknesses are, so that we don't expect him to be, should we hire him, that we don't expect him to be something that he isn't. So we got a good look into the character, ministry, and the philosophy, and sort of the background of Kyle. So rather than me tell you all about that, we then decided, we then went from there and did a elders and wives Skype meeting with Kyle and Natasha and the elders and wives. So that was an interesting logistic, trying to pull that off in the wives' room, living room, and try to do that. And it went very well. We had some good conversation, got to know Natasha a little bit better. And then they had the birth of their 4th child. So that put a little bit of a pause on, we all felt, let me just say, after that interview, we talked as elders and wives, and unanimously, within 3 days, everybody came back and said, yeah, we think this couple is a good fit for LifeBridge. So then we decided, let's fly them here. So then that was complicated because of the baby. So now it's less complicated, and they were able to make this work, so they're here for the weekend. And we're excited to have them and their 2 youngest children with us. And so I'm going to ask the 2 of them to come forward and put them on the hot seat and give them a chance to tell a little bit about their story. And I have some questions, but as Angie mentioned, she mapped out a few questions of And I helped with a few of them. So there's some questions there. If you don't know what to ask, she has the magic basket of questions that you could choose some interesting and intriguing questions. And so what I'll do is I'll leave it with you. And why don't you just basically give an introduction to who you guys are and a little bit about your ministry background and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, so my name is Kyle. I grew up in northwestern Alberta, and then when I graduated, went to Bible college up there, and felt from an early age a call to be involved in vocational ministry. And some of the biggest influences in my life were being involved in different discipleship or mentoring relationships, some when I was still in high school, and then the college that we both went to and met at, that was a strong emphasis as well. And so that's something that's made an impact in both of our lives and has really contributed to how we view the ministry of the church and our role in that. And following, when I graduated, Natasha was just finishing up her program, and then after that we moved and pastored in central Alberta for a little while, and then I went to do a master's degree, and that brought us to the lower mainland of British Columbia and studied there. We were involved in a church there while I was going to school that had a big impact in our view of kind of the depths of what community can look like in the church. We were fortunate enough to be involved in a community group there, and we were kind of the first of our group to have kids, and everyone else kind of followed shortly after, and we were able to, for the first few years of our oldest son's life, raise him together with this other group of people and be involved in seeing, well, that old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, and to see that kind of come to be in this group and grow together in a lot of different ways. And so even though we've moved on from there and we're now living in Vancouver, some of our closest friends still a part of that group, and they've kind of spread out as well. But when I kind of look back at my formation as a disciple of Christ, and obviously how that impacts me being a minister, I'd point to those two things: the being involved in community in Langley, and a number of instances of being involved in both formal and informal discipleship relationships is something that's strongly impacted me.
Your whole life story. I'm Natasha Radburn, and I'm from, what do I have to say?
Do you want me to? You can do it. Born in?
Yeah, I was born in Victoria and then moved to Prince George when I was 6. Am I telling my testimony now? I was raised in a Christian home and accepted God when I was at VBS when I was 6. And then I went to a youth group and in church all my life. But when I was 15, my grandma died, and I walked away from the Lord because I wanted Him to save my grandma just until we could see her again. And He didn't do that. He didn't answer my prayer the way that I wanted Him to. So I walked away when I was 15. And I don't know, when I was 16, I came back to Him in a very scary circumstance. I called on Him, and He saved me literally and physically at that moment. And I know that He always holds me in His hands because of that. And from then in high school, it was more about bringing people to youth group and just the relationships that I had at that point. And I wanted to go into ministry to be a missionary. So I went to Bible school, and God gave me a pastor instead of a missionary. But It is. So that's how we got here.
So that's a quick story. We can go more, and if there isn't enough questions, then I'll tell you. Okay, then it's good. So do you want to go into questions, or?
Well, maybe you could talk about how was it that you came across the job posting, and then what was your reaction, both spiritually and emotionally, when you kind of started talking about this opportunity and the immensity of what it would actually mean to move to the other side of the country?
Yeah, so we'll be honest that we were not looking to move to Atlantic Canada. It wasn't originally in our scope of the different types of positions that we were looking at. But similar to what you said, Dave, about the similarity in the philosophy of ministry, and that was something that really stood out to us as we saw the job posting and the direction that the leadership has articulated to me about that LifeBridge wants to move into in building community groups and focusing on building that sense of community, but in a way that has the church involved in mission together and reaching the neighborhood. And so that and a number of other things that kind of came out both in the material that was provided and then in subsequent conversations, that we saw a real strong correlation between how we've viewed ministry and the direction that the church wants to go. Yeah.
Can you tell us about a time that you had frustrations in your ministry, or ministry that you needed to see God work in, or struggle?
Always to answer these questions, good. You want to think of the best example. So take a second for that. I think one example is one of the things that I was doing previously. I was being involved in a leadership development program, and it was a fairly intensive program that involved teaching that I did, and also each of the students going through the program was paired with a mentor. And when you're leading programs like that, you end up mentoring the students that don't fit in as well with another type of mentor. And we really focus on trying to get mentors that would relate well to the students that we're going through. And so one of the more recent guys that I discipled, I knew from the beginning we weren't a good match, but there wasn't someone else to take him. And so trying to learn how to speak his language, so to speak, and to get through to him, it was something that was a lot more difficult for me, and it was pretty stressful in trying to communicate well to him. The story ends in kind of a positive and a negative in one sense. So there was one particular message about focusing his identity on the cross and on being a Christian and what Christ has accomplished for him, that I was trying over and over to get through and just couldn't. And then we meet one day. He's like, I had this great revelation. I picked up this book called Gospel by J.D. Greear, a book that I'd recommended to him quite a while before, and he hadn't read it. But he just randomly could have picked it up, and then he started quoting back to me everything that I thought I was trying to tell him over the last year. And so it not in the way that I anticipated, but he did grab a hold of those truths. And interesting enough, through that, kind of realized that his motivations for being in the program weren't aligned with the program's aims, and so he ended up stepping out of the program as well. So it's a bit of a bittersweet, because it did accomplish what we wanted him to, and yet that ended up going in a bit of a different direction. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll jump into that a little bit more. So when I was really little, my parents always had us fill out these end of the year things at the end of the school year before we could really go on summer holidays. We had to fill out this little memories book, and one of the questions was, what do you want to be when you grow up, of course. And so when I was in like kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, there's the options, a bunch of options to check off, and one of them was professional ice hockey player. So of course I checked that, and then the other one was missionary. It wasn't a Christian book. It's kind of surprising that they had missionary in there. So that was for grade school, and then after that, missionary was no longer a box you could check off. So I'd write in pastor and do that, and then kind of later, middle school type age, it was something I didn't desire as much and wanted to. Actually had a very specific vision of what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I was a mission specialist at NASA, learning how to grow plants in a zero gravity environment. Anyway, doesn't have any correlation to this moment now. But when I was leaving elementary school and starting into junior high, I really started to dig into the scriptures a lot more. And I grew up in a Christian home, was taught the Bible a lot, but it suddenly became real to me that this was a book written by real people to real people, and it affected real life. And no, that just hadn't really occurred to me before. And as I began to dig into that, just really had a deep desire to have other people realize that. And so I grew up in a smaller community, about 3,000 people, and so I had opportunity in my youth group, even though I was young, to be involved in leadership in that way. And a lot of those early leadership experiences didn't go very well because I was depending on my own strength. But through the mentoring that I talked about before, I was able to realize what it means to lead with God's wisdom and God's strength, and really enjoyed having that opportunity to do that. And so by the time I hit high school, I was very convinced that I wanted to go directly to Bible college and to enter ministry. How my vision of that calling has changed, that's a whole other story that, again, I can get into, of how God has shaped my understanding of what it means to be a pastor and how he wants to use me. But that's kind of the beginning part, that it's something that's been very clear to me.
You mentioned leadership. I'm thinking of the leadership of other people. You explore your own personality. How would you describe your leadership personality?
I sometimes joke that I lead from the middle. As far as I know, that's not an actual thing. But another type of illustration is as a player coach. And that's something that you will actually find in leadership books as an option. But I want to be among people when I lead. I want to help a whole group to move forward. So typically you might have somebody who's in the front, and they're very vision oriented, and they say, this is where we're going to go, and they just call back to everybody and say, this is, and point the way. And that's great, and there's a lot of circumstances that require that. And other people they're the very, very strong shepherds, and they're in the back and making sure that nobody is trailing off. And there's a place for that too. But I'd be somewhere definitely in between those two, of a lot of shepherding gifts, but also vision. But my main goal is to be able to listen and hear and learn about the people that are around me, that are part of the group, and say, where are we going together, and how can I enable you to be the best that you can be in the way that God's gifted you and equipped you in the direction that you're going. Oh, 2 questions here. At the back first. Yeah. Sorry. Angie?
Are you in a position right now in DC?
I've stepped away from my ministry position at the moment, yeah. So.
Was that from a calling, or was that just the difference of opinion of what was going on?
No, we were ministering at a church. I was associate pastor, and we went through a time of transition, and the lead pastor stepped aside, and we had proposed sort of a joint leadership with another guy that was there, that we ended up discerning was not going to be the ideal way for the church to go forward. So he ended up taking the lead pastor role, and we stepped aside to allow that to happen.
Mine was just building on the leadership question. Can you think of a leadership style that you've had in the past in your own ministry, and how you handle it? I know.
It's just pretty. Yeah. Again, sometimes it's hard to find examples that are good for this. I think maybe a good picture is this leadership development program that I was doing. And what we do with that program is we have a different cohort join. It's a 2-year program, but a different cohort joins every year. And so my first goal when we have a new group is to get to know them and understand them. And so we just had, shortly before we left, we had one of the cohorts graduate, and it was really funny listening to all their graduation testimonies, where they were all referencing, one particular set of illustrations that I used, and someone else came to me and they said, I don't really connect with those illustrations, but I want to do the program. Is it okay to do that? And I was like, yeah, the program is not about this group of illustrations that I use. It was just for that group because they really connected with them. But we shape the program to whoever's there, and I didn't realize how contextual I had made that program with the people that we had in it until there was kind of these 2 different groups that were wanting to access it. I don't know if that's clear enough. Clearly not, because Natasha doesn't understand what I mean. Well, yeah, I don't know if that's quite to what you were saying, but I thought that kind of illustrated the type of leadership that I involved in. But I guess it isn't a trial. Should I try again? Can do another? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, question for both of you. I want to know what your personal hobbies are, what you do to unwind and recharge yourself.
Well, we have young children, so we don't have a lot of hobbies anymore. I already mentioned playing hockey, but I can hardly quote that as a hobby because it's something I don't have opportunity to do very often anymore. Mostly together we play board games. Yeah, so that would be the number one thing, that either having people over to play or just the 2 of us. Oh, and personally by myself, I read. I like to read. Yeah, that helps a lot.
What's your favorite board game?
Right now, our favorite board game is Terra Mystica. It's a very intense game and very hard to learn, but it's worth learning. We like games a lot. I really like going out in nature and unwinding there. Even if I'm just driving or just someplace where God can just say, He catches my eye. That's where I unwind. And then kids. I do.
Yeah. I did anticipate this question. So my favorite hockey team is the team that's won the most Stanley Cups in my lifetime. So.
Obviously not Toronto.
It's a big division in our church. We're trying to mend that.
Yeah, I know.
Does anyone know what that team is? We all.
Okay. No, that they've won the most ever, but the most Stanley Cups in my lifetime was the Oilers. Have won, so. My lifetime, not the team's lifetime. Yeah, it helps to be almost 100 years old. Yeah.
Owen, our oldest, will be 8 on Tuesday, and then Elliot just turned 6, and then Evelyn is 2.5, and Alethea is 5 weeks.
Natasha, can you share a little bit more on why you wanted to do missions? What was the driving force behind that?
I really connect in small groups of people. I worked at Tim Hortons and Starbucks going through college and later high school, but or earlier high school. But the conversations that you have one-on-one or in smaller groups with people, people just seem to open up with me, and I really like having non-Christian friends. Is that a funny word to say? So, and just being able to talk about what they're going through, and being able to share God with them, how He is in my life. And just this last season of life, the boys being at school, I was on the PAC, quite involved. And this one woman is originally from Amsterdam, and her kids all were at school with my boys. And I connected really well with her, and I mean, it takes a long time of investment into a relationship, into a friendship, and to foster that into talking about God in a deep way. But it's so worth it. So just in April, they moved to Norway, and she told me in end of August, she's like, and we started going to church, and her husband was so against church and Christianity and stuff, but it's just amazing when you see the flower bloom and just start to grasp on, and that's what drove me.
Oh, lots. All right, left, right.
Ladies
Okay.
first.
I don't know. I'm not good at that.
He's older than me, so he might forget.
Okay.
My question is really for Natasha. You said you were born in Victoria. You moved to the mainland when
Yeah.
you were young? To where
Prince
was-
George. Prince George.
Prince George, that's north?
Yeah.
Okay. So I assume that all of your family is out in BC? Okay, the question is, you're going to be, if this all comes together, you're going to be moving your family away from your family, 7,000 miles, or whatever it is, from one coast to the other. Now, I asked that question because when Mary and I came down from Ontario 32 years ago, the biggest thing she missed coming down here was her family, her mother, her sister, her brother. And I was working all day, so she was there by herself. Well, the kid. This, what you're thinking about that?
I will miss my family if we move anywheres. But we've always lived away. Like, I went away to Bible college, and I didn't have a car to go home whenever I wanted, so it really did feel like an eternity away. And my family is pretty close. Like, Mom and I talk every day now, and her health isn't great, so it is going to be a struggle if we do move out here. But we've never lived close to family, and we've always seemed to make family wherever we go. Kyle and I were, before we were dating, because in Bible school you don't section off, because then people talk. So we always didn't go on PRBI walks. We went on nomadizes. So we were nomads, and coined the phrase, and that we've moved from Sexsmith, where we were at Bible school, to Big Valley, to Langley, to Vancouver, and now who knows where God will lead us. But we've always made really good friends that have felt like family wherever we've gone.
This may be our question, answer. What sort of dynamic do you want to bring to our church?
Yeah, I'd place that more in the hard question. No, because it's really easy for us to be living in Vancouver and be like, you know what that church in Nova Scotia needs, you know? And I just don't think. I mean, we've talked with the leadership, and that helps immensely. But for us, we want to be able to come into a community and get that sense, make sure that, you know, in deeper dialogue with the leadership, make sure that we are hearing correctly, and to lead with that. I wasn't joking when I say lead from the middle. In order to lead from the middle, you need to be among the people, and so that's kind of where what we would. I don't want to commit to any answer without doing that. From what I sense from the leadership is building a sense of community and working on bringing community and having these community groups really to dig into what they're doing, which is to build community with each other, but also to be able to invite others in and looking for those connection points, learning how to share the gospel in everyday life. But beyond that, I think that's something that we need to be involved in to really see the direction that the church will go from there.
Aside from, it's an answer question I thought was really. As you've both gone through the integrating process of the life of each other, how has God shown you that this would be a ministry community fit and fit for you as an individual and as a family? And it's kind of an addition, how will pray that we get complicated to know whether or not it's wrong, right? So I'm just wondering about how
Yeah, to answer that, I'd kind of circle back to I think that the leadership did a good job of articulating the direction that the church wants to go, and so that was seeing that correlation between how we feel equipped to minister and what the leadership was looking for has really God continuing to show kind of things that related in that, and as we discussed further, and just some of the ideas of where the church wants to go, and that resonating with that, those have been the ways that God has kind of been working and confirming us to come. And yeah, coming away from the weekend and having to actually meet face to face with the leadership and meet some of the congregation, then we will take that back to pray, as you guys will too, and consider us, and we'll definitely be doing the same in praying and consulting with people who know us well to help discern.
aside from the anointed family, is there anything that we've done
Bring up the list.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's mostly the unknown, you know, and there's just a lot. I've never visited the East Coast. This is my first time. Natasha did a little tourist trip with her mom. That was quite a while ago as well. And so the unknown is something that obviously we fear, but we also, in one sense, nothing's unknown, because we know the one who holds the future, as the hymn sings. And Natasha mentioned how where we've went, God has brought us family, and there's moments where we don't know if we trust that He'll continue to do that, but He's proven faithful in our own lives, and also if you look in the scriptures in the life of His people, He's proven to be faithful in that. But there's times where you worry about that as well.